They say home is where you return. For me, it was the first battlefield I chose to retreat from. My father scorned my ideals. My brother pitied my career. They built an empire of money and power, while I served the country in silence. For 10 years, I was a ghost in my own family. So why tonight? Have I decided to return to their party? Among those familiar, yet unfamiliar faces. Was it to see how rotten the empire they are so proud of has become from the inside? Or was it to pass final judgment, to see if it's still worth saving? I stepped out of the car, adjusting my tie. The civilian suit felt like a borrowed uniform, a little tight in the shoulders and too loose at the waist. 10 years. I hadn't worn one of these in nearly 10 years. Tonight, my father's corporation, Meridian Apex, was hosting its annual party. The smell of money and pretense wafted from the hotel's main hall. My mission tonight was simple. Observe. It was the final phase of an 8-month-long investigation. On the surface, I was the prodigal son returning, a major general whom my family saw as nothing more than a lowly soldier. A staff member in a glossy silk uniform led the way. She glanced at my name tag, then at the seating chart, a fleeting look of confusion on her face. This way, Mr. Vance. This way was a round table tucked into the most secluded corner of the ballroom, near the entrance to the restrooms and the emergency exit. Perfect. An ideal position to observe without being noticed. I pulled out a chair and sat down. From here, I had a full view of the stage and the VIP table where my father, Theodore Vance, and my brother, Corbin, were seated. The murmuring began. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. A few distant relatives, some of my father's old business partners. Is that the eldest Vance son? He looks a bit worn out. I heard he's still in the military. I poured myself a glass of water. It was cold, just like the atmosphere at this table. Then my father stepped onto the stage. He was still the same, tall and imposing in his custom-tailored suit, with carefully coiffed salt and pepper hair. His voice boomed across the ballroom, talking about Meridian Apex's achievements, its impressive growth numbers, and, of course, about his golden boy, Corbin. After praising Corbin to no end, he paused, his gaze finding me. A half-smile appeared on his face. And today, he said, with a hint of sarcasm in his voice, we are pleased to welcome the presence of my eldest son, Gideon. After many years of pursuing idealistic fantasies, he has finally found the time to see what a real empire looks like. A few forced laughs echoed from the tables. I didn't look up. I just focused on the glass of water in my hand. I could feel Corbin's eyes on me from the VIP table, a look mixed with contempt and a certain unnamed anxiety he was trying to hide. He didn't know what I knew. He thought I was just a failed older brother who had returned. I let him think that. I raised the glass to my lips, taking a sip. The water was ice cold, helping to clear my head. The night had only just begun, and I wasn't going to miss a thing. The party ended, and I accepted my mother's invitation to stay for a few days. There was an urgency in her voice, as if my presence could mend something. My father didn't object. Corbin just shrugged. To them, I was just a strange guest. Whether I stayed or left didn't matter. They didn't know that I had orchestrated the invitation myself. I needed to get inside. The house was as vast and cold as I remembered it. The marble floors swallowed my footsteps. There was no warmth, only the smell of wealth and solitude. Breakfast the next day was silent. My father hid behind his financial newspaper, occasionally uttering a philosophical remark about the value of money. My mother silently avoided my gaze, her hands constantly rearranging the perfectly arranged dishes on the table. Corbin was the one who broke the silence. He put down his coffee cup, looking at me with a condescending air. "Hey, Gid," he said, his voice feigning concern. "If you're bored with the army, I can set you up with a position. A nominal security consultant, for example. Not much work, but the monthly salary would be enough to live on. My mother quickly interjected, her eyes full of hope. That's a good idea, Gid. You should start thinking about settling down. She abruptly fell silent when she caught my father's cold glare from behind his newspaper. She lowered her eyes, continuing to mindlessly rearrange the bread plate. It was a way to control me, to put me in a gilded cage for easy observation. I smirked. Thank you, I replied curtly. I'll think about it. I left the dining table first. No one stopped me. I walked down the hall, up the stairs. I didn't go to the guest room that had been prepared for me. Instead, I turned towards the west wing of the house, where my room used to be. The door was unlocked. Inside, it was no longer a bedroom. It had been turned into a storage room. Cardboard boxes were stacked on top of each other, and old furniture was covered in dust. The smell of mildew filled my nostrils, erasing the memory of new paper and plastic airplane models I used to love. I walked to a corner of the room, where there was a more familiar stack of boxes. I didn't need to open them all. I just needed to lift the lid of the top box. Inside, neatly arranged on a layer of silk cloth, were my medals, the Silver Star, the Legion of Merit. Beside them were carefully framed letters of thanks from the Department of Defense. My mother hadn't thrown them away. She had just put them in here, in the dark, where no one could see them. I looked at them for a while. I felt no particular emotion. They were just pieces of metal and paper. They were proof of a life my family had chosen to ignore. I gently closed the box, leaving no fingerprint. The anger, if there was any, was ice cold. It didn't make me tremble. It made me focus. I turned and walked out of the room. My mission here was very clear. I hadn't come back to seek recognition. I had come back to end a war they didn't even know was happening. That night, I didn't sleep. The luxurious guest room became my temporary command center. My heavily encrypted military-grade laptop sat silently on the table. I connected it to the family's Wi-Fi network. As expected, the security system was surprisingly lax. Overconfidence is a fatal flaw. Green lines of code appeared on the screen. I wasn't going to launch a direct attack on Meridian Apex's servers. That would be suicide. Instead, I was looking for a backdoor. My father's laptop. The one he usually used for work at home. It didn't take me long to find it. I didn't infiltrate. I simply planted a digital bug, a tiny tracking program, to copy all synchronized data. Patience is a weapon. This investigation had begun 8 months ago. It all started with a low-level data leak at a naval base. Harmless, but when my team dug deeper, we discovered a strange type of encryption, designed to look secure but which could actually be broken with a special key. The trail of that code, after weeks of searching, led directly to a subcontractor of Meridian Apex. From there, a bigger picture slowly emerged. Money laundering through defense contracts, data manipulation, and possibly selling sensitive information to a foreign power. And now, the Cypherfall project, the biggest defense contract of the year that Meridian Apex was so desperate to win. This wasn't a normal contract. It was a trap. Or a final test. I received an encrypted file from a trusted colleague at the Pentagon. Inside was the draft technical proposal for Cypherfall. I ran a proprietary analysis algorithm I had written myself. A few minutes later, the results appeared. There it was. Buried deep within millions of lines of code was a perfectly disguised malicious code snippet, a sophisticated backdoor that allowed whoever held the key to gain full control of the system. I zoomed in on the document. At the bottom of the page, in the internal technical approval section, were 2 digital signatures. One was from the head of the technical department, and the other signature, clear and arrogant, was Corbin Vance, Chief Financial Officer. I stared at the name. My brother didn't have the skills to write this code himself. He was just a pawn. A greedy one placed on the chessboard. So, who was controlling this game? I closed my laptop. I had what I needed. Now it was time for the next phase. Confrontation. A week later. The large conference room at Meridian Apex headquarters. The air was thick, with the smell of expensive leather and tension. Board members, investors, and even a few reporters from major business magazines were all present. Everyone was there to witness the final appraisal of the Cypherfall project. My father sat in the chairman's seat, his face full of confidence. Corbin sat next to him, his suit impeccable, a smile on his face as if the contract was already in his hands. The meeting began. After some empty presentations about potential and profit, the board chairman, Robert Callahan, stood up. Callahan was a former Deputy Secretary of Defense, a gray fox of Washington before retiring and taking this seat. I had secretly contacted him 2 days before. He didn't ask many questions, just said one thing: "Do what you have to do, General. I'll clean up the rest." "And now," Callahan said, his voice solemn, "we would like to introduce the representative from the Department of Defense, who has the final authority to approve this project." All eyes turned to the door. The door opened, and I walked in, not in my civilian suit, but in my Major General's uniform, with the gleaming medals on my chest. 2 junior officers followed me, carrying secured briefcases. The entire room fell silent. I could hear someone drop a pen. My father froze, the glass of water in his hand suspended in midair. Corbin went pale, his smug smile freezing and then shattering. He looked at me, his eyes filled with panic and disbelief. I walked straight to the empty chair at the head of the table, facing my father. As I passed Callahan, we exchanged a subtle, almost unnoticeable nod. He was the only person in the room who wasn't surprised. I placed my briefcase on the table. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice calm. "Shall we begin?" Callahan cleared his throat to regain the room's attention. "Yes, General. Please." I didn't waste time. I skipped the financial section and the profit numbers. I went straight to the technical issues. "Page 57, section 3.4, I said, my voice clear, my eyes not on the document but fixed on Corbin. "The proposed encryption protocol here is AES 256, standard, but our team has discovered a minor, intentional modification in the source code library." I gestured to an officer. He connected his laptop to the large screen. A cascade of code appeared. "This modification," I continued, "creates a vulnerability, a backdoor that allows the entire data stream to be decrypted without the primary key. To put it simply, ladies and gentlemen, this is a system designed to be compromised." The silence in the conference room became heavy. The Meridian Apex engineers started to sweat. I projected another document onto the screen. It was the internal technical approval page. "CFO Vance." I addressed him directly. "Your signature is on this document, as the person responsible for both finance and oversight. Can you explain to the Department of Defense why you approved a design that could jeopardize national security?" Corbin was speechless. He stammered, his lips moving without a sound. He looked at my father for help. But my father, for the first time in his life, also had nothing to say. He just looked at me, his eyes no longer holding contempt, but the terror of a man who had just realized the game had been completely turned on its head. The meeting ended in controlled chaos. Callahan announced a suspension of the project to reevaluate the technical issues, tactfully asking the investors, and pressed to leave. When the room was empty, leaving only the glass walls and a heavy silence, he turned to my father. "Theodore, I think you and your sons have some things to talk about." With that, Callahan left, closing the heavy door behind him. He had given me a clean battlefield. Now, it was just the 4 of us. Me, my father, my mother who had been called and was sitting silently on a sofa, her face drained of color, and Corbin. My father spoke first, his voice hoarse. Gideon, what is this? I didn't look at him. I looked straight at Corbin, who was huddled in the corner of the room. I never wanted to be a hero in the eyes of my family, I said. My voice even, without a hint of emotion. But when the family gets involved in a federal crime, I have no choice. My mother let out a sob, her hands covering her mouth. My father was stunned. For the first time, he wasn't looking at me like a son, but like a foreign power, a law enforcement officer who had just walked into his house. Corbin let out a bitter, desperate laugh. You want to arrest me? Be a hero in front of Mom and Dad? He was still trying to act tough, but his trembling voice betrayed him. I didn't shake my head. I just looked him straight in the eyes. Do you think I spent 8 months investigating and flew halfway around the world just to do something that simple, Corbin? My voice dropped lower. I want to save you. One last time, I took a step towards him. You're not good enough to create that code. You're just the one who signed the name. The person behind you, the one who gave you that design, is using you as a scapegoat. When everything falls apart, he'll disappear. And you, as the CFO, with your signature on every document, you'll be the only one held responsible. Treason, Corbin. No lawyer can save you from that. I let my words sink into the air. I saw the last bit of smugness on Corbin's face collapse, replaced by pure fear. He looked at me, then at my father, searching for a salvation that didn't exist. Who? My father asked, his voice almost a whisper. Who is behind this? I turned back to him. That's what I need Corbin to tell me. I looked back at my brother. The game had reached checkmate. Now, it was time to see what move he would make. Surrender, or be destroyed. Corbin didn't answer right away. He just stood there, leaning against the glass wall as if without it, he would collapse. The silence stretched on, heavy, broken only by my mother's muffled sobs. My father sat down, looking a decade older in just a few minutes. The empire he had spent a lifetime building was on the verge of collapse, not because of a competitor, but because of the conspiracies within it. Finally, I spoke, breaking the silence. My voice was still even, without pity, only truth. The mastermind is not one of ours, I said, my eyes still fixed on Corbin. He's with the foreign partner the company is collaborating with to expand into the Asian market, right? He promised you a hefty commission, a shortcut to surpass your father and prove yourself. He gave you the technical documents, and all you had to do was sign. Every word I spoke was like a hammer blow to Corbin's last defense. He slid down to the floor, his hands holding his head. I didn't know it was that serious, he mumbled. He said it was just a way to optimize the project. Optimize? I sneered. By selling out national security? I didn't need an answer. I already had it. I turned to my father. You see, your son is not a traitor. He's just a greedy fool. I walked over to Corbin, crouching down in front of him. Listen carefully, I said, my voice just loud enough for the two of us to hear. I'm going to give you a way out. A deal. You give me all the evidence, emails, call recordings, documents, anything you have on that partner, everything. In return, I will present this case to my superiors in a different light. He looked up, his eyes full of skepticism. A different light? The light that you, as a responsible CFO, discovered these irregularities and secretly cooperated with the Department of Defense to expose this conspiracy. You will be the one who earns redemption, not the criminal. Your parents will not be dragged into this. Meridian Apex will only be fined for managerial oversight. And that mastermind, he'll take all the blame. I stood up. You have 24 hours. Decide. After 24 hours, this deal is off the table. And I'll do my duty. Without exception. I didn't wait for an answer. I knew he would agree. Fear is a much more powerful motivator than greed. As I walked past my mother, she grabbed my hand, her voice trembling. "Gideon, thank you." I gently removed her hand. "I haven't done anything," I said. "It's not over yet." I walked out of the conference room, leaving behind a broken family and a chess game whose outcome I had already decided. But I knew the real enemy was still out there, and he wasn't going to sit idly by and wait to die. You have pointed out a very accurate contradiction. Corbin actively scheduling a meeting at 1 a.m. in a deserted place doesn't seem logical if his purpose was simply to hand over evidence. It creates the feeling that he is setting a trap, not seeking help. I was right. The enemy was not sitting still. 20 hours after I made the deal, as the clock struck midnight, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I answered. "Gideon." Corbin's voice came through, trembling and full of panic. He knows. He knows I met you." "Calm down," I said, my voice steady. "Where are you?" "I don't know. He just called me. He said if I want the family to be safe, I have to bring all the evidence to the P4 underground parking lot at the Meridian building. Alone. At 1 a.m. he said someone would come to get it. Gideon, what should I do? This is a trap." It was indeed a trap. The mastermind didn't want the evidence back. He wanted to silence the only witness who could testify against him. "Listen to me, Corbin," I ordered. "You're not going anywhere. Stay in the house and lock all the doors. Don't answer calls from anyone else but me." "Understood?" "Understood." "Good. Send me everything you have through the secure channel I set up. Right now. I'll take care of the rest." I hung up. The plan had changed. The enemy had revealed himself. I didn't notify my team. This mission required absolute mobility and silence. I checked the Sig Sauer pistol, tucked neatly in the holster, hidden under my jacket. I would go to that rendezvous. But not as Corbin. The P4 underground parking lot was damp and deserted, with only the buzzing of neon lights. I didn't drive in. I walked down from the emergency exit, moving silently between the shadows of the luxury cars. I chose a perfect position, hiding behind a large concrete pillar, where I could observe the entire area without being seen. At exactly 1 a.m., a black sedan with no license plate slowly drove in. It stopped in the middle of the parking lot. The car door opened, and a tall figure stepped out. He didn't look around frantically, but observed professionally. His hand was always in his coat pocket. This wasn't a low-level henchman. This was an assassin. He stood and waited. A few minutes passed. When he realized the target wasn't going to show up, he began to lose patience. He pulled out his phone, probably to report. That was when I made my move. I made no sound. I stepped out of the darkness, as light as a ghost. "Looking for me?" I said, my voice just loud enough for him to hear. He spun around in surprise, his hand immediately pulling out a suppressed pistol. But it was too late. I was too close. I lunged forward, using one hand to swat his weapon aside, and the other to deliver a powerful elbow to his jaw. He staggered. I gave him no chance to recover, using a quick arm lock to take him down to the ground. His pistol skittered nearby. I glanced at it, muttering to myself, H&K pistol. Subsonic rounds. Not an amateur. Then I pressed the barrel of my gun against his temple. "Talk," I growled, pressing the gun harder. "Who sent you?" He didn't answer, just looked at me with hatred. But I didn't need his answer anymore. I had all the evidence from Corbin. This man, now, was just a thread to tighten the noose. A few weeks later, everything ended in silence, not with a bang, but with the cold, methodical process of the law. With the evidence Corbin provided, and the confession from the assassin I caught, the operation was swift and clean. The mastermind, a senior member of the board of directors, was arrested by FBI agents right in his mahogany office. No handcuffs in front of cameras, no front-page scandal. Callahan had ensured everything was handled discreetly to protect Meridian Apex's reputation. Justice was still served, just without the fanfare. Corbin had to face an internal hearing. He lost everything: his CFO position, his power, and his license to practice in the financial sector. He lost his career, but he kept his freedom. It was a steep price, but a fair one. I heard he enrolled in a system security course at a small university, far away from the glamorous world of finance. A new start from scratch. My father, Theodore Vance, also made his decision. He held a press conference, announcing his resignation as CEO. In front of dozens of cameras, he didn't talk about conspiracies. He didn't blame anyone. He just said that he takes full responsibility for the weaknesses in management that created the conditions for misconduct to occur. At the end of his speech, he added one more sentence, his eyes looking straight into a random camera. And I would like to thank the brave individuals who stood up to protect the integrity and honor of this corporation. I watched that clip in my office at the Pentagon. I knew that was his way of apologizing. My mother called a few times. I didn't answer, not because I was angry. It's just that we didn't have much left to say to each other. A few months passed. My life returned to its familiar rhythm: secret meetings, cyber operations, long nights analyzing data. The Meridian Apex case became a file stamped, completed in my cabinet. Then one day, I received a small package sent to the base. There was no return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting on my address. Inside, there was no letter, only an old photograph, framed in a simple oak frame. It was a picture of me and Corbin when we were children, about 7 or 8 years old, 2 skinny kids, standing in front of the old house, with arms around each other, grinning innocently, and knowing nothing about empires or betrayal. I looked at the photo for a long time. I didn't smile, but the block of cold stone in my chest seemed to have melted a little. I placed the photo on the corner of my desk, next to top-secret military documents. It stood there, right next to the gray, military-grade laptop, the innocent smile in the wooden frame and the cold metal shell of the war machine. The past and the present. It stood there, a silent reminder that I had completed my mission, both to my country and to my family, in the only way I knew how: the way of a soldier.